everyone. Welcome to another episode of Taking Up Space, a Michelle A. Mayer podcast. Super excited about today's conversation, y'all. Please don't pay attention to the lackadaisical color of my video. My phone dropped, and this is a very expensive phone and one that I just can't go. If I could, I could, but I don't want to have to go and replace it like that right now, especially during this season's Christmas. I got other stuff to do. So, I was frustrated about that. It bummed me out. It's just, but anyway, like I said, we get over it. And, one thing I want to make mention is that we have these ideas in our minds of what we want to do. The ideas that I've had in my mind have led me down paths that, I wish I could have done differently. So I learned from them. My first idea of how I came on, how I would make my presence felt on social media, God was showing me, or my angels or my ancestors were showing me that I probably shouldn't do it that way. But I had this idea in my mind that I was going to do it that way. I'm a very focused person. When I'm on, I'm on. And everybody that knows me knows that. I'm very action oriented. So it's hard for me to deviate from the plan. But I wish I had, because it would have saved me a lot of experiences. But the experiences have empowered me. But it brings me to the fact of just this phone. Like, something as simple as dropping this phone and it lessening my motivation to come on and do the videos, because it's like, I don't like the resolution. But it really ain't about the resolution. It's about the content. I had to remind myself of that. And then I also had to remind myself that whatever God has for us to do, God will make a way for us to do it, friend. I've never seen in the Bible God send anyone of his footmen, of his people, to do his will without making it so that they could do it. He always finds a way to get them to get it done. All they need to do is be the avatar in the earth, and whatever hiccup that they experience along the way, they must go back and tell God about it. Put it on the altar of your mind and let God know about it, so that God can create an avenue for you to overcome it. And that's a word for many of you in this season. Whatever it is that you really need, you need to put it on the altar of your mind, of your heart, and let God know about it. And if it's for you to do, if it's within God's will for you to do it, it will get done, friend. There's nothing God cannot do. God has created this whole system. We're about to get into this. Many see Christians as misguided. I was watching some stuff on social media and interacting with people over the last week. And honestly, it really is a situation, in my opinion, all these are my opinions, that many people of the world that are in a more metaphysical way of thinking, walk, or even those that are of the Judaic faith, many see Christians as misguided. Many see Christians as taking things that were symbolic, literal, or even going as far as making up stories for people to pour all of their faith and energy into, and siphon in some kind of way to use for selfish gain, what have you. And when you look at it, again, we're going through the Bible. All of us, all of you that have been watching me, we have gone from Genesis. We are now in the book of Acts. We've gone all the way through the Old Testament. We are in, I think, the fifth or the sixth book of the New Testament. And the fifth book of the New Testament. We're more than halfway through the entire Bible. So, there are many things in the Bible that have been revised. We all know that the New Testament has been rewritten for selfish gain, in a sense. It was selfish. When the Romans came in with their Hellenistic activities, Hellenistic, in the sense of rewriting and hoarding all the sacred documents. That's exactly what they did. They came in and hoarded. They took all the libraries under control, locked them down, took all the vital sacred texts, locked them down, and studied them and rewrote them. They found it so important that they went to all of these lengths to obtain them, then to study them, and then to rewrite them, and then to present them back to these same people that had them. So this is where the whole theory of revision comes into play. Yet the whole world every text on this planet has been rewritten, friend, even those in the metaphysical communities. All those things that they see on a tablet and they reading and that are rewritten so that you can understand them, all of that has been rewritten. Whether it holds more truth than other things, I can't say, but we're all working from the same level. We're all on the same playing field. We just got different material that we're pulling from. And, you know, in my spiritual walk, I was like Abram. I've turned over every rock in search of the truth of God. I have fine-tuned myself in a way where I've entered into circles that were very frightening, all because I wanted to know. I felt like I was born into this world. It's my responsibility to know why I'm here. If God created all of this abundance and beauty and majesty and perfection that I see in everything that is around me, then why wouldn't God create me to do a specific thing in this life? Why would God have me here, starting at point zero and working my way up in the darkness, wasting vital, precious time just to get the foundation of this thing under my grasp mentally? Why? And that level of curiosity has led me to the most peculiar places, the most peculiar experiences. And those peculiar places and those peculiar experiences have led me to knowing and experiencing a deeper knowing of God. A knowing that nobody can debate me out of or change my mind in a sense. All you can do is add to it. You cannot subtract from it. And all roads outside of my first love, which is Christianity, did nothing. They did nothing but lead me back home. They acted as cousins and aunties and uncles to my mother and father. All of them had their own unique truths, all of them. Yet I could not find safety in any of them. The responsibility was too vast. And whether I stepped into them prematurely, and that's why the responsibility felt so overwhelming and too vast, or encountering them and cross-referencing them with what I felt at my mother and father's house, made me come to realize that I don't have to do that. That's not my creation. Not to say someone else wasn't created to do that. I don't know. I'm not them. But me and my house, we were not created to do that. The ebb and flow is too stringent in that. I have a hard time figuring out today at times if the winds pick up and, it start raining too hard. All the different things that you must have under your belt to be able to master that universe, I had not ascribed to. It humbled me. And I said, even though this is fascinating, this is very fascinating. Those that are looking for me to meet at their level spiritually know that I am not there. And I myself don't even know what is expected of me. I don't even know how to interact with this. So I must go back home and let my father and my mother guide me. Allow myself to be useful in my original creation, to know my role and to stand in my role, to master that. Instead of to be looking over at someone else's lawn and saying, I could do this, or looking at my father and mother and saying, I'm going to be you before my time to be them. You ever had somebody in your life that you hired to do a particular role, and you're up under them often because you're trying to get them ramped up to being acclimated and successful and being in that role, so that at a later time you don't have to invest so much attention into them, and maybe that they could use the knowledge that you've instilled in them along with their experiences in the role to be able to train other people. Yet these people that you brought on ain't even there long enough before they get to counting your money, telling you what you should be doing better, on their phones on the way home, talking about all the negatives that they see, not knowing what it takes to even be you or do what you've done. They don't have any money to invest in the venture. They don't even know how you got the money to invest in the venture. They're waiting on a check and low-key fantasizing about being you in their spare time. Everything you do, they watch and low-key condemn or size up. It's the same way in spirit. It's the exact same way that many that have gone against the grain with God because they wanted to be God. And even though they had some information, they didn't have the full spectrum. They couldn't. Because it's a thing of levels. And they're ongoing levels. Lifetime is not even enough time to even equate to what it takes to get to those levels. Lifetime is too small of a increment of time to put on the map. A lifetime is like a second. So I bring all this up to give you an understanding of just the fundamentals to my walk. And, when you look at the apocryphal text and you look at Abraham, and a lot of the things that Abraham experienced were the same. And many of you have experienced these same things and looking for the truth of God, the truth of your existence. What role do you play? What should you be doing? What should you be not doing? And why? And in doing so, at times you do step out of what many in the Christian community would consider acceptable. Because the Christian community, and I'm not here knocking the Christian community. Like I said, I love every word in this book. Love it. But a lot of times we get so rhythmic and ritualistic in things that we go no further than that. We're stuck there. We take things completely out of context and we villainize things that we should be embracing. We villainize our superpowers. We strip ourselves down to nothing, making the walk that much harder. So you are a house of power. Surely the power flows through the house, but you don't actualize it. You're not standing completely in it. You're receiving effects of the power because the power is so vast. And yet the effects of the power that you receive are minuscule compared to what the true nature of you is and the power source from which flows through you at its, what it would be at its optimal or even at its average. Many of us are walking around here below average, thinking that we're really firing off. And we take offense to it when someone says it. We want to condemn them. Never once do we say, well, why do you say that? Never once. It's a right or wrong thing all the time. And this is what I want to talk to, because many that step away from it, that may have had a foundation within the Christian community, step away from it because of these things. And I know many of us are saying, well, let them go. We don't care. But the original rule of the house, the original way that the house is run, still suffers. When are we going to get back to restoring the house? When are we going to be like Nehemiah and restoring the wall? We need a wall restoration, not a fake one. Not a fraudulent one where people are just like, okay, yeah, that's the bandwagon we're on this year. We're gonna get on a wall restoration and we're gonna act like we really want to repair the wall, but we're still not gonna face things. We're not gonna stop condemning one another of things that we really shouldn't condemn one another for. And it has nothing to do with worldly things, sexual preferences and material acclamations. Nothing to do with none of that. Material accumulations, I meant. Nothing to do with that. I'm talking about facing things like, what is really the law? What is really the law? Is it actually a sin to honor those that have come before you? Is it? Is it actually, are you going to go to hell if you pay attention to the processions of the sun, the moon, and the stars? These are fundamental things that these people were masters of. This is what set the house apart, friend. These people were masters at it. What was the significance of having those 12 crystals in the ephod? Spirituality is what I'm talking about. I'm not saying I want to legitimize doing astrology and all of that, astronomy. I'm not saying I'm trying to legitimize using crystals. I'm not saying any of that. I'm using these as an example. So that when we look at what we read, we get the maximum from it. Those are just some examples. There's many more. And this is why I say, when you enter into certain communities and you begin to speak about spirituality outside of a religious context, because this book is a spiritual book. This is a spiritual book. This ain't got nothing to do with religion. Religion is what you impose on top of this book. Religion is the system that you impose on top of what is written in this book. This book has nothing to do with religion. This book has everything to do with the ancestral and the spiritual. Everything. And I think that is the part that when you say, you are of a particular, when you say you are a Christian, certain people, not all of them, they look at you as if you confine yourself to those limits. That's exactly how they look at you. They look at you like, okay, well, she's going to try to judge me. She's going to tell me all these things that I should and shouldn't be doing. And she's going to look at things from a very cut and dry perspective. And many in the Christian community, even those that are in the house now, like myself, when I first started out, I just felt like there was something more. This is not my first time going through the Bible, friend. I done been through this. I just felt like there was something more. Not to say that I need more than what is written in this book. That is not what I'm saying. When I would go and I would hear services, I would get what I would get would be a pep talk to go back out and work or overcome trauma. I would get a pep talk. And I would read this book and I would I see this in another way, but there's nobody that sees it along with me. There's nobody that I can toss my ideas off of. And if I do have someone, most times they would agree with me. And the conversation would always end in, you can't question God. You just got to accept it, even though it doesn't make sense. Even though what you're saying is logical, whatever ideology that you have created based off life experiences and based off what spirit is flowing through you, may very well be true, but because it's not written verbatim in this book, you can't ascribe to that. And because of that aspect of it opened me and led me to the most peculiar places in search of that truth. It was like a longing I needed to fulfill. I needed to comfort. It was a longing that I needed to find some sort of solution, answer to. And I know many of you are with me on this, and there's probably many of you that are not. And that's okay too. Yet, you get so far in it. The reason why I brought up the aspect earlier of the aunties and the uncles as they relate to my father and my mother. Many in the metaphysical communities, they don't ascribe to the philosophies. I'm not going to say the philosophies. They don't ascribe to the context of characters in the Bible. They don't ascribe to them. They ascribe to a lineage of other older gods. The gods before the God of Israel came onto the scene. Because, friend, prior to the God of Israel coming upon Abraham, what was there? What was there? Prior to the God of Israel coming upon Abraham, there was a pantheon of gods. Follow me here. There was a whole pantheon, thousands of them, of gods. Gods within nature, gods within the elements, gods of this star, gods of that planet, gods of the wind, gods of the dirt, gods of the underworld, gods of the heavens, gods of the solar systems, far and wide, gods of the sun. God, more gods than you can count. And with what we see consistently throughout history is that there is always a transition. I have seen this everywhere I look. It goes from the birth of one concept and it reaching its fullest extent, and then the baton being passed to another concept. And that other concept could be completely in contradiction to the original concept that has been in place for hundreds of thousands of years. Yet this transition it takes place time and time again. That is one thing that you will see consistently is change. Change in the spiritual world, change in the physical world. So you have gone from the worship and adoration of multiple gods to the worship of one. And at the time, it was heretical. Caused chaos on the planet. Because all of this attention that is being poured into these gods now is being siphoned to one particular place, leaving the old gods in the darkness. Initially, people would still honor them in secret. But as time progressed, it became less and less popular until those gods went completely dark. The majority of them. And now the adoration of one God is the concept. And this is where people get, whenever you have a conversation with people that are not supportive of a Christian concept, they always rely back to this, and they say, "Oh, there's so many commonalities between this and that, Christianity and this, and Jesus is common with this other person that lived thousands of years before, and then all this kind of stuff," and it's actually true. There's no lie there. It's very much so true. Yet with any system, y'all, Christianity is not the first system of the world. Christianity is not the first spiritual system of the world. You must know your history. And a lot of times people don't study. They just get what they need to get. However, it doesn't lessen nor negate the power and the truth regarding it. It doesn't lessen or negate it. Whether you call what you're calling an older name, and I call what I call a new name, it doesn't lessen nor negate the power of it. Potato, potato. Tomato, tomato. Yet the base, when you look at Christianity, you're looking at a huge base of people. Spiritual energy poured a huge base. When Jesus walked the earth in biblical times, Jesus did not have as many followers as Jesus got right now, friend. You ever thought about that? Jesus, when he walked the earth in biblical times, did not have as many followers as he got right now, friend. It has grown itself into a superpower built off of faith. Faith. And this is the force. Faith multiplied becomes a knowing. It is a force. All of it is a force. Faith is a force. Knowing is a force. Knowing and faith are similar. Faith is nowhere near as powerful as knowing. Even though faith's head count is higher, you got more people standing in faith than you do have in people standing in knowing. The power of knowing surpasses the power of faith, so you don't need as many. The pool of energy is huge. It is huge. Thus, all of those that have come before us, all of those many people, through trying times, through good times, has poured their energy into this pot. And even though there are people standing in this spiritual system that may feel like there's something more to it, they don't feel that they need to abandon it because of that. What should come is someone to show them more to it, because there is more to it. There's so much more to it. There's so much more relevancy. There is deep spiritual power. When you see someone on a metaphysical, in a metaphysical environment, or someone that does not ascribe to a Christian way of life, whether they're a shaman or whatever they're doing, you would be like, wow, they're really powerful. They're really doing things. They're really able to make change in the world. But friend, your house is just as powerful. They got to go it alone. If the winds ever pick up for them and stuff get to going left, they better be, what was his name? They better be like Balaam. You better be able to control them winds yourself. You better be able to have a relationship with those gods of the wind. You better have a relationship with the God of the rain. You better have those demons bound in a ring somewhere like Solomon did. And you better not be, you better be 2 steps ahead of them, or else you'll go out like Solomon. Because they're constantly vying. They don't want to be bound up. They don't want to be at your service like that. You really need to be activated to get after this. And the last one that was actually activated and gotten after it successfully to an extent was Jesus. This is what I'm talking about. Instead of, I'm not going to ever get on here and negate Christianity and be like, yeah, well, you know, we are limited and we're not really, you know, this and that. I'm not going to tell you that. I'll be lying to you. I stand on this. This is my life. Friends, if you knew my life, if you knew some of the things I've gone through, yo, it's all I got to lean on. It's all I got. It is a symbiotic. It is one of the only systems where it is a symbiotic. With one. It's not a symbiotic where you prostituting yourself to everybody. You got to make everybody happy. You got offerings all day long. You can't even rest. Every day your day is filled with offerings. Trying to make everybody happy. This ain't that. This is not that. Yet Jesus said, in my Father's house there are many mansions. You can go whatever way you want to go. But you got to know, just like the serpent came to Eve in the garden and told Eve that the tree was this, that, and the other, and that if she ate of it, she would be like God, her eyes would be open. That was true. She would be like God. But he didn't tell her the responsibilities it took to be able to handle such knowledge. And she would never know really all that she would need to have mastered to handle such knowledge until she began walking it. It's the same way. So I went all the way around the world to get to that. This is the covering. This was an exclusive covering, only for the children of Israel. This covering was not given to anybody else. And this is what made it such an issue. Everybody else wanted it. Who wouldn't want it? Made life easier. These are the same things that tore up Egypt. They went through the same thing. The worship of multiple gods to the worship of one God, the Aten, the sun god. It caused political upheaval. So much so that many of those that did it got written out of history. Every system on this planet goes through a transition. Goes through a passing of a baton, friend. You cannot stop it. It is the way of this system. It reaches its apex and it must transition into something else. Nothing is any different. But you do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't. That pool of energy still is getting used. It's still being siphoned. It's still useful. And surely names change. But the people, the players, is all the same. I'm going to keep going. We want to get a level of control so bad. And I can understand that. Because without any kind of footing, you feel vulnerable. You feel like you're just subject to whatever comes upon you. So you want to have some form of leverage in the game, right? When you look at Babylon, they have reached a level of perfection in the word. The word is what creates this whole thing. It is the word. And because they have reached such a level of perfection, Bible says, Bible says, where did I write that? Genesis 11, verse 7. Okay. He said, let us go down and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. It's as if, like I said, you can go to Nubia, you can look at Nubia, because Nubia superseded Egypt. You can look at Egypt, You can look at Sumer. You can look at Phoenicia. All of these places dismantled, broken down, all their systems, linguistic systems, mathematical systems, didn't get broken down, went underground. The science of their systems taken. And all of their gods put in darkness. These are the fundamentals to the systems that we have today. These are the foundation builders of the systems that we use today. All of them. Yet they were not exempt from the passing of the baton, friend. None of them. When you look at Phoenicia and you look at Phoenicia and you look at their impact on the planet. I did a video on Phoenicia and I didn't do it any justice. I need to do it again. Phoenicia's impact on the planet is so monumental. The Phoenicians took to the sea. They made relations with the spirits of the water to allow them safe passage. They used the stars as guides, as their navigational system to know where they were so that they could find their way back home or find their way to wherever they were going. They went across this entire planet, terraforming it. They terraformed this entire planet, friend, with seeds. What kind of seeds? I woke up this morning with this on my spirit. What kind of seeds did they terraform this planet with? They terraformed it with seeds. Their physical seeds, mating with women in distant places, or even bringing women with them and creating communities there and leaving people there and moving on to other places. They created, through the seed of thought, they would come upon people in distant lands that had never seen other people. Remember, the Phoenicians were the first to do this. It wasn't like this was done by anyone prior to. The Phoenicians were the first to come and encounter people in distant lands. And they would come upon people and they would take their seeds, their plant seeds and different seeds, and then they would bring their plant seeds and they would plant seeds in the ground and grow trees and plants in other regions that were not native to that region. And they would take those people's seeds along with them on their journeys and plant those seeds around the planet, including their homelands. They would take the seeds of animals to help with agricultural purposes and farming to these lands that these animals were not distinct of. They were planting seeds of thought, sharing spiritual knowledge and perspectives to people, setting people up industrially, showing them how to farm, showing them how to do certain things and learning how to do such things from those people. They were planting seeds. They were terraforming this whole planet. The Phoenicians, who would later go on to be the Moors. They would later go on to be these people. It's amazing when you think about it. And what would happen is a number of things that would happen. My nails are terrible, y'all. I'm done. I was trying to peel them off myself. But what would go on to happen would be that signatures would show up across this planet. Signatures in the form of nationalities, in the form of people. All having the same form, but looking differently on the outside. I'm brown. You might have a red person. You might have someone more of a yellow complexion. All of these things began to happen. And I saw on a video last night from Seven. Seven said something that was very interesting. And he nailed it with it. It's as if they had began the ability to, prior to the Phoenicians, mind you, now I'm not even giving the Phoenicians this, but prior to the Phoenicians, they had began to master the concept of what happened in the Garden of Eden. A snake mating with a woman, or even a snake mating with a lion. And all it would take to make it happen, make the uncommon blend with one another and find commonality, would be one drop of blood. One drop. One drop of the original person's blood that is of this garden. That's all it would take. And they would run with that concept. And that concept, they would create signatures all over this planet with that concept in the form of nationalities. Nations are nothing but nationalities housed in one place. And of those nationalities, what they found was that in order to keep, what they found was that outside of that nationality system, the Moors, thousands of years later, would take it several steps further. And they would say, after all the systems had been broken up, there was no real unity in the Moorish house. Wasn't no unity. They had began whoring out the knowledge to people that were not to have it. They were bartering it. There was no unity amongst one another. And there were certain of them that had gotten sick of one another. Because, just like I said, there's always this transition, y'all, where you reach your apex. You've reached your apex and you know your history. You know your God. You know the system of things. There is somewhat of an arrogance that sets in. There's no one to challenge you. Everyone is beneath you. No one meets you or is above you outside of your brethren. So arrogance at times sets in, if arrogance is the word. And some of this house became tired of it. And they said, I want to set myself apart from this. I need to set myself apart from this. Whether they saw that the ship was sinking, they got a word from somebody and said, this thing is sinking, you need to set yourself apart, or what, I don't know. But the move they made was similar to the original move of blending what you would consider a lion and a snake, using one drop of blood as the common binding element. The element to make both be able to blend and be common. And they began infiltrating into the opposite of their outward expression. They began blending genetically with them. I'm gonna say this. I know that's not making sense, and I really want to make sense to you. I had met someone, and he was telling me. I know it's gonna sound far fetched to y'all, but he was selling this book, and I was like, oh wow, how great you wrote a book and you're selling it. And we began talking, and he began telling me that he had this lady that he dated, and she was a reptilian. And her being a reptilian, he didn't know until one day they were at home, and he woke up, and she was laying next to him, and she looked like a lizard. A whole body looked like a lizard. And he said he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of her. It wasn't frightening, like, oh my God. He said, but he saw her for who she truly was. And that she had told him that only happened, I think he said that was only the second time that had happened to her in her life. And usually she stays in the human form. And it made me think after he told me that, because I've heard some really strange things. That's nothing compared to some other stuff that I heard. And I believe all these things are possible. I mean, once you begin to study this planet, you will truly find that all these things are plausible and actually have been said many times before. But it made me think, like, wow. You blend with something to hide who you are in them, giving you the appearance of them, but it's really you. You don't lose any of your genetic power. All you lose is your outward expression. And this is what the Moors did. They did such. They began blending with those that were used to help them. They began blending with the least advantaged people. At the time, there was a caste system. A caste system is basically a racial system or an economic system. At that time, it was both. It was a system where if the darker you were, the more spiritually powerful you were. The wealthier you were, the better off you were in the system. All of the same system that we got today, except for it's reversed today. It's reversed. But this was a system that very dark-skinned people created. And it has been reversed on them. So what one would do would be to infiltrate within the least advantaged of their time. Those of the highest advantage would infiltrate with those of the least advantage. And those that infiltrated would have knowledge of certain things. It's brilliant. So that if anybody ever wanted to come for the knowledge and try to pinpoint them, they could never find them. Because through time and through genetics, they transferred the way that they look. You'll be looking for them in a group of people that they're not within. They're hidden within what you would find to be the most unworthy. It's brilliant. Yet, they have the knowledge. And those that you would see to be the most unworthy, the most unenlightened, a great light would shine upon them. Great light. And it would be like overnight, they would come into enlightenment. They would establish themselves in a way that it would come in the way of like a destiny swap. I was looking on YouTube and I just saw this thing called destiny swap. This spirit has just been moving through me. This is the first destiny swap in the world. Kind of. Because to do such things goes against the rules of God. To do such things will cost you a lot of karmic debt. And instead of the group of people that, well, let me ask you, which group of people would incur the karmic debt? Which one? Which one y'all think would incur it? Would it be the original group of people? That those that did such things came out of? Or would it be the people that those that did such things blended into? Or would it be both? It's interesting. And in a way, you could see how they would justify it. If you've ever been through some things with your people, you surely would see how they could justify it. And so when you see the Moors and they're walking around and they're all dressed and bedazzled in these nice clothes and all this regalia, and they got on these white tights and they got on these red tights and these black tights, all of that is symbolic of everything I'm just telling you. All of that. All of that. Destiny swapping. That's my podcast today. I don't know if I'm going to post this one, y'all. I was all over the place with this, but I'll use it as a reference point for another video if I don't. I'm always looking to be useful, you guys. Honestly. I don't make it about me. I make it about you. I make it about us. I'm just always looking to be useful. And so, and to give you things that I wish I knew. To help me in my knowing. And in standing in the truth of this book. Because nobody can ever tell me that there is no truth and power in this book. I don't care who you are. I might not have all of the, this, that, and the other. And I don't need all that. Because if this book wasn't true, I wouldn't read it. It couldn't hold me. The way my life is set up. It wouldn't be able to sustain me. It would not be able to, friend. Because I looked outside of this. And that which I found was too tedious for me to be able to make a strong relationship with. I had to do too much to keep it going. This is the part. Sure, everything you're saying about all the old gods and how they, all those things that happened to them, they're absolutely true, in my opinion. But they've been reintroduced. That energy doesn't go anywhere. A lot of them are put on ice. Doesn't mean that they go away. They go away for a season. Just like Mother has gone underground for a season. It's the same way. She ain't gone nowhere. This whole planet wouldn't be possible without her. Yeah, you don't call her name. You pay her no homage. You abuse her daughters, which are your power source. You abuse your power. You abuse those that come before you in love the daughters of her to help you. You abuse them. You do it. You drag them and you abuse them. You try to drag them and you try to abuse them. And in doing so, you abuse yourselves. You lift them up that come before you because they don't stop the flow of water. They continue to do what they were to do, honoring their role and what they were created to do, regardless. So they are empowered and they are blessed. But you suffer because you have been sold on something that ain't true. And you've allowed it to inflate your ego to a point where you think that it's you and it's her. And when one of her daughters reminds you that it's her, it angers you because of your resentment and your fear of her. I keep telling you, nobody went underground more than women. Nobody. And we've honored every last one of our responsibilities. We've honored our curse. We've honored it. We're love. Keep going. Peace and love.